Hello, I'm Rachel Richards and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug where we use research by experts and our own expertise to discuss everything and anything to do with parenting teenagers.
Hi there, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness coach, mindful therapist, musician and mother of 3 teenagers. 2 of them are twins.
As a parenting coach and former BBC correspondent and mother of teens, I've seen the transformative power of getting people together to share ideas and support each other. So here we are. Welcome to our club. Now, this time we're going to talk about vaping. An anonymous parent said, "I've just found out my 14-year-old has been vaping nicotine and marijuana. I'm beyond horrified and I'm so pissed I'm shaking. I don't even know where to start with punishment. I'm so heartbroken. To make matters worse, I only found out because he got sick." So I can see she's really traumatized by this. We have discussed vaping before in episode 8, so it's worth listening to that one too. But things move on and there are so many more parents worried about this now. So before we go on to that, should we just have a quick stop to talk about our nuggets, the things we've learned this week? Susie.
So mine is a bit more of a general, how can we be? So I had an episode in my house last weekend where it was a bit tricky, and the realization to me that, well, parenting and probably most other things is really all about being able to regulate, and not all about, but there's such a big part. And the more I practice mindfulness and the more I practice regulation, the more I think it is about that.
So when you're talking about regulation, what do you mean?
Good question. Regulation means, so we have our nervous system, and to be honest, most adults spend a lot of their lives in dysregulation, which means we're in fight, flight, freeze, or other dysregulated states where our nervous system is out of whack. We're not at peace, we're not present. And when we don't realize that, we just spend our lives pinging around in reactive mode. So we need to learn to be able to step out of that and to regulate. And there are loads of ways you can regulate. Breathing is a huge one because we regulate our system. We want to stimulate our vagus nerve.
And why would we stimulate our vagus nerve?
Because it's our direct connection to our self-soothing system, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. And when we can get in touch with our parasympathetic nervous system, that is what regulates us, what self-soothes our systems. Right. And so we can sort of make a shortcut by singing or exercising or breathing is huge. All the breathing tools, long exhales, there's loads and loads of tools you can do. So, but we have to practice it, and basic awareness of what does it feel like to be regulated, and then how can I get back to that when I feel dysregulated, because dysregulation is also normal. And learning how to do that, I think, is absolutely fundamental to being a human being, but also massively to parenting teenagers, so that we can be a space that is regulated, because that ripples out to them, and then they can lean in on that and lean up against it, and we don't react with them, escalate with them, we don't crumble either. But we can give some sort of healthy feedback and create this space for them. That's not the same that we have to be calm all the time, but we're regulated.
And that's absolutely vital. And I think a lot of parents who have listened to our podcast have said, particularly when they listened to the one about communicating with your teenager, that one thing they'd noticed was that they tended to overreact. As soon as their child came to them with something that was a problem, they would feel this emotional response, and that would make them want to do something. Yes. And it's about being able to know that you're now dysregulated and come back to just being, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be calm. There's another word for that. I'm just going to be calm, and I'm going to be able to help them through this rather than me being part of it. Yeah,
absolutely. Because parenting teenagers is massively triggering. We get triggered all the time. So we need to learn how do we get back to a state where we're regulated.
Yeah, love that. So for me, I was eating my supper the other day. I leant back and I said, I'm too full. I've eaten way too many calories this week. My daughter said, Mum, you know that calories are proven to be a bullshit measure. Stop putting that nonsense on us.
Oh, go girl.
I winced. Now, the truth is I come from a family that has always struggled with weight, and I had a really unhealthy attitude to eating as a result. And had to teach myself how to eat mindfully and healthily. And I went through the path of calories to get out the other end. Now I rarely weigh myself and I focus on nutritious, delicious food, and I stop eating when I'm full. All those things, this sort of slow eating. And I've encouraged my daughters to listen to Tim Spector, who's at the forefront of the science of nutrition and body differences. But here's the thing. The reason I'm mentioning this is I have my old programming still in me. You know, these words still come out of me every now and then. I don't think about it and I'll say this stuff and it's not healthy. And what really delighted me, even though it was a bit uncomfortable, was that my daughter heard it, knew that it was wrong, and also flagged it up. And I just thought, gosh, I'm so happy that we have that relationship where she feels safe enough to be able to say, that's, it's not helping us. And I think we as parents need to, even if it makes us wince a bit, when our kids say stuff, give us feedback. That's a really healthy thing. So it's even a good thing you could text them and say, what can I do to be a better parent to you?
That's amazing.
And they might give you a little bit of feedback that you may not want, but that's healthy.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. So that was a big learning.
That's really cool.
I thought I'd put that all behind me. But anyway.
Yeah.
Now, back to vaping and this poor woman who was deeply upset by finding out that her son was doing it. My first response when I read that, having done the research I've done in the past, was that sickness that he was experiencing was classic withdrawal symptoms.
Right.
And she verified that. She said he admitted he'd run out of vapes and that was why he'd started vomiting.
Gosh.
And that's how she discovered about it. And in terms of punishment, I said, I really don't think he needs punishment. No. He's been sick, which is punishment enough. And the thing to do now is to try and support him in fixing this situation he's got himself into and keep him going.
Yeah.
he's gone cold turkey, try and keep him going.
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
No, gosh, that sounds really hard and probably really shocking for her.
So my first top tip before we launch into all the details about vaping is to watch Big Vape and watch it with your teens. Susie, you've just watched it, haven't you?
I've just watched it and made me utterly furious. I think it's a really good program, but it's really annoying.
Yes. So it's called Big Vape. It's on the Netflix series Broken. And it's absolutely brilliant because it's a complete eye-opener and it contextualizes vaping so that teens can see how they can get sucked into it, how it's something that happens within a school environment and then they don't really notice until it's too late that they're addicted. Yeah,
and the conflict between that, that we hear that, it's not so bad as cigarettes and it's a good thing. And it gets explained really well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So how bad of a problem is it? Now, it's interesting because I did lots of research to trying to get some stats, and e-cigarette use among youths remains a top concern for the FDA in America. They say that 14% of high school students and just over 3% of middle school students reported current e-cigarette use. The shocking thing I found was that unlike in Europe, where e-cigarette nicotine concentrations can't legally exceed 2%, there's no nicotine concentration restriction in the US, which is just mind-blowing to me. Yeah. And in Australia, they have a different approach again, which is that it's illegal to sell, supply or possess an e-cigarette or any liquid that contains nicotine without a doctor's prescription. But suppliers have been getting around it by removing nicotine from the ingredients list.
Brilliant.
As you do. So, and there's an estimated 11% of 16 to 24-year-olds who are regularly vaping. In the UK, it's about the 11 to 17-year-olds. It's gone up from 4% to 7% in 2022. And the proportion of children who admit having tried it is 14%. Was 14% in 20 and is 16% in 2022.
Gosh,
so you're seeing a rise.
It's higher.
Well, that's
way
my
higher.
point. So I looked at those stats and I thought, really? Because my kids say they know so many people who vape.
I dropped my eldest is in sixth form college, which is like a normal sixth form college. It's a big one, and I drop him off. So
sixth form is about sort of 16, 17, 18.
Yes, yeah, final. He's in his final year, and they're all walking around in a cloud of vape. All of them. I mean, they're probably not all, but it looks like that. And I asked him, I said, "What do you think? Like statistically, totally honestly, how many do you think are vaping in your college?" And he was like, "Yeah, probably 2/3."
Wow,
just off the top of his head. Like he doesn't have any figures, but that's his impression.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
16%,
that's one
not
example. Right. My kids say they know huge amounts of kids who are vaping. I don't know what the percentage is. One of my daughters said that there was a huge growth of vaping when she first got into senior school, so 13, and then a lot of that dropped off. Because they started to say it wasn't cool. So I think it just varies from school to school.
Yes, I think so.
I've seen, from Big Vape, and I've seen anecdotal reports that one of the problems is that teens will leave the classroom to go and vape in the bathrooms in the loos.
He said he'd never experienced that, and I think that possibly, I think in Big Vape it's America, isn't it? So it's the levels of nicotine are higher. That's not to say it's not happening here, but he hadn't experienced that.
Interesting, and that's a really good point, because if the levels of nicotine are higher, it has an impact because the withdrawal will be much bigger, and so they will be needing to get a top up much more quickly. Disposable e-cigarettes are now the most used product in almost all these surveys that we've seen. So, but the specific product varies from country to country. So, for example, in the UK, it's an Elf bar that has been the most popular, but we'll get onto that in a minute because that's a problem in itself. The FDA has announced it's cracking down on the illegal sales of cigarettes because they've acknowledged that there's an epidemic proportion of youth use of electronic cigarettes. So finally they're acknowledging there's a real problem here.
And the kids still don't understand. I mean, there's a lack of information.
They massive lack of information.
Still don't understand that it's bad for them.
No, and because if I go into a supermarket, any of the supermarkets here, but particularly the budget or the big supermarkets, there are massive displays of vapes. They're very colourful. They're near the tills. They're as you walk in, and all the cigarettes are behind roller shutters that are locked. You've got a complete difference between the way that these are being sold, and what that's going to say to a teenager is, those are fine. Cigarettes, not so much.
Yeah, because they have an understanding. I think most teenagers like, oh, cigarettes, why would you do that? Because you can die from that. That's stupid. I mean, I know some teens do still smoke, but the proportion is tiny compared to what it was.
Completely.
But vaping is still understood as oh, it's not so bad. And watching the Big Vape, you kind of understand, well, that's because compared to smoking, it's the kind of the transition, isn't it? If you want to wean off the fags, then you go onto the vape.
Yes.
But that's not the same as giving vape to people who've never smoked. I mean, you don't want to start it.
No, and they're not creating a clear distinction.
No, and the understanding is, it's not so bad. It's okay. And I I've told my teens, vaping is bad for you. Oh, well, yeah, okay. But it's not out there. It's not out there.
And so, as a parent, what are we thinking? So, first of all, how can I tell my kid is vaping? The JAMA pediatrics patient page said that you'll look out for fruit or candy-like smells, trouble breathing, unexplained cough, mouth sores, increased thirst, nosebleeds, throat clearing, increased irritability, mood swings.
Teenager. How do you tell?
It's a teenager, isn't it? The mood swings.
I mean, the fruity smell. Maybe they've got some good chewing gum.
Yes. So it's tricky, but those are little telltale signs. Look out for those things. What you need to do is you need to start early. Tweens, younger than that even, before they go up to senior schools, you need to be having conversations with them about, what is an e-cigarette? What are cigarettes? The same way that you would warn them about cigarettes. You say, do you know what an e-cigarette is? Do you know why it might be a problem? Do you know anyone who's using them? Be very gentle about it. You don't need to be giving them a hard line about it, but you do need to be clear about your fears.
Yeah, and if you can approach it in a sort of curious way, there's no consequences here. I'm curious. Are you? What do you think about it?
But be clear, like with all these other subjects that we've talked about, being very clear about what you think of it is an important step to keeping them away from trying these things.
Because they are listening, and they are when they're faced someone saying, do you want to try it? They might say yes, but they will have it in the back of their head, oh, mum doesn't like this, or dad doesn't like this.
Yes,
and
why?
Does make a difference.
Yes. So if you need some information about nicotine, because I didn't know really how nicotine works, I looked at the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and the way they explained it was, nicotine was originally isolated from tobacco leaves in 1828, and scientists found the main ingredient that causes addiction is the nicotine, because there are lots of different substances in tobacco. What does nicotine do? It's absorbed into the blood and immediately stimulates the adrenal glands to release adrenaline. This stimulates the nervous system, central nervous system, and increases your blood pressure, breathing, and heart rate. So it gives you a kick.
Yeah.
The nicotine activates the brain's reward circuits and increases levels of the chemical messenger dopamine, which then reinforces rewarding behavior. And it's that's at the core of why it's so addictive. So more recent research has shown that the addiction produced by nicotine is extremely powerful, and can be as strong as addictions to other drugs like heroin and cocaine.
Yeah, it's really strong. In Scandinavian countries, I've just learned about this. You can get nicotine, they call them patches, but it's not the same as like a giving up smoking patch, but it's like a little white powder. So Swedish people, they call it snus, and that's tobacco leaves, and they'd ram it up their, it still do, I think it's only legal in Sweden.
Like chewing tobacco.
Yeah, chewing tobacco. They'd shove it up their lip, and you'd be talking and I'd be playing in an orchestra or something, and then they'd laugh and you'd go, ooh, what's that? It's like this funny green brown thing. But now they've refined it. And I think you can still get that in Sweden, but I don't live there anymore, so I don't know. In Denmark, you can get these little packets of white powder, which is nicotine, and they put it on their gums. And my son says you can get it because he's regularly in Denmark. You can buy it everywhere. It's really cheap, and they shove it on their gums. They put it other places too, which has also been in the news.
I'm not sure we can put that on this podcast.
Really not recommended. We had quite good fun Googling it.
Think genitourinary tract infections.
Yeah, don't do it. Yes. But the point is, it goes onto your skin, and it's the nicotine is absorbed immediately by your skin, and it's the nicotine fix that they're looking for, right. And it's an immediate hit.
Is there? I had no idea how that would affect any rates of other problems, but presumably what you're missing is the lungs.
Yeah, so I think their attitude is, well, I'm not going to get lung cancer because it's not going through my air passages. I'm sure there are other, it's chemical, it's a white chemical, it's not going to be good for you.
Sounds like something else that people shouldn't be taking. Right. Okay.
Yeah, it is nicotine, but
right.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's that method of transport. When it comes to a vape, you're probably wondering, well, what's in, how much nicotine are we talking about? Yeah. And this is where it gets really difficult, because e-juice comes in different nicotine strength levels. So I started trying to research this, and it depends. And it depends on which brand you're buying. It depends on which of the nicotine juices you choose, or the nicotine salts. So, for example, I'll take one. Elf Bar, I think it was 600, contains 2 ml of e-liquid. That's a 20 milligram or 2% nicotine strength. So the 2% nicotine strength is the maximum you're allowed in a vape in the UK.
Okay.
That 2% nicotine level device is equivalent to 45 to 48 cigarettes.
Wow.
You can actually choose different levels of nicotine.
Yeah.
But it depends on how many puffs you're taking as well.
Yeah.
So you can't say so if you found them with a vape, you wouldn't know how much nicotine they're using unless you actually sit down and discuss it with them, which is why it's important to have those conversations. So, if you're going to talk about it, you just say, so do you know what the strength of that is, and how many cigarettes that's the equivalent of? And,
they probably just bought it because of the flavour,
because
so
I'm finding
little information out there.
Yes, I spent a while sort of looking through all the different sites, and it's all out there. Yeah. But you actually have to do quite a lot of sifting to find. Okay, it's equivalent to and this means this and this, and I would just go, I'll have one of those.
And then what I also think is difficult, and maybe you've got some information on that, is what are the health consequences of it? Because we know what smoking does, or the awful consequences of that. Because there's a myth, isn't there? Oh, it's not as bad as smoking, but what are the health consequences? They seem
that's
to be quite
the problem.
hidden.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And they're new as well.
Well, apart from addiction, and addiction's a very real problem. Yes. Let's not forget, because what's happening is these companies are taking our kids for mugs. What they're doing is getting them addicted at an age where they're not really aware of what's happening, so that they have a lifelong revenue stream.
Yes. Right, it made me livid.
That's a really powerful message to get through to your kids. It's like you'll be spending the money on the rest of your life, lining the pockets of these companies.
Yeah, it's like history repeating itself. It made the big vape. It'll make you livid, because these guys they know that they're damaging teenagers, and they do not care. They've only stopped some of their advertising because they've been found out. They do not care. It's just horrific.
Coming back quickly to the addictive nature of it, the reason it's so bad for teenagers is because the brain's hyperplastic it's the most plastic time of a brain in an entire lifetime. And so those rewirings are going on very quickly.
Yeah.
So if you start a reward cycle going on, that's much more likely to result in an addiction than it would be in an older person, for example. E-cigarettes also contain compounds that either haven't been studied clearly enough or are clearly a problem. So to heat the vapor, you need a battery. And so there have been reports of metal traces of tin, nickel, chromium, manganese, arsenic in people's systems. Hospitals have seen an increase in an acute lung injury, which is called EVALI, and that's an acronym.
Okay.
And the symptoms are very close to pneumonia. So those symptoms are things like coughs, chills, coughing up blood. Up to 80% of people with it had GI symptoms too, like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, general abdominal pain. Okay, so this is actually a real problem that happens.
Yes.
And they've been trying to work out what causes it because they're seeing an increase in this, but they don't, when they try and look at vapes, the big problem they've got is they're not highly regulated. No. And the flavors, there are thousands, there are about 7,000 different flavors. And the chemicals that are being used will vary.
Yeah.
So what they're having to do is try and look across it to find out what's causing what they're finding in all these people.
Yeah.
Because that brings us on to the other thing. It's that if you've got a highly regulated industry, the great thing about it is that when you buy something, you've got an idea of what it is that you're consuming.
Yes.
So with alcohol, coming back to that, as another drug and another stimulant, that's something where at least we have enough data on it to say, well, it's likely to do this.
Yeah.
And it will vary, but it's likely to do this. When it comes to something like vaping, we just have so little information.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of inhaling a load of chemicals is probably not going to be great for us, is it?
No.
Wouldn't it be lovely if those companies went, hang on a minute, we're just going to check these are safe before we give them to our teenagers because we're not sure yet.
Yeah, but then they wouldn't make the money.
Wow. Well, imagine that world. That would be nice.
The truth is, it is better or less harmful than cigarette smoking.
That is true.
Yes. So we know that.
Yeah.
So if you are smoking cigarettes, moving on to a vape is better.
Absolutely.
However, starting a vape is never, no. So, and it's interesting because I looked into something, an online vape superstore, and they were talking about what they've learned in terms of regulation. And they said that, what we do actually know that there are certain things that are effective to stop teenagers from accessing these products. And one of them, and when I say accessing them, yes, of course they can get around everything. But the point is they're in plain view. And the subliminal message to all teenagers is they're absolutely fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they're along with all the sweeties and everything else. So one thing they definitely found with the cigarette industry was as soon as they removed the packaging, the pretty packaging or the branded packaging, and made sure it was really bland and then put it behind shutters, the amount of teenagers who were trying to smoke dropped dramatically.
Yeah.
So we know that
really
this is effective.
Yes.
And what's shocking is that they're not doing that in these various countries. In the UK, just in the past month or so, it was discovered through a newspaper report that the greatest sold brand in the UK, the Elf Bar, which is a disposable, was being sold in all these national supermarkets, the big chains, with levels 50% higher than what is actually allowed in the UK.
Wow, and nobody was checking that.
Nobody checked it. And so when they discovered that, they had to remove them from, well, they did it, they didn't all do it immediately, but they would remove from the shelves. And the manufacturer said, oh, sorry, those were going to a different jurisdiction, but they were mixed.
Some other teenagers going to get them instead.
Exactly. And then, they'll go on to the black
Not
market
the English
just
ones,
for the teenagers.
But,
but also, we've had raids on Oxford Street, which is the main shopping street in London that lots of tourists go to and lots of teenagers go to because it's a big stretch of lots and lots of shops. And they have big candy stores on that street. The American style candy stores, which are a magnet for teenagers. And police do raids on those every now and then. They find thousands of vapes that don't comply to UK standards. So the big problem is it's not just, so if we're educating our teens, it's not just, look, it's not good for you. It's also, once again, when it comes to drugs or any of these things, we don't really know, you don't know what you're putting in your mouth. You don't really have enough information.
And nobody's brave enough to not do it yet. Like to the companies, they will do it anyway. So the teenagers do have to be on it.
Well, Juul have had to withdraw from, their very aggressive marketing that, because America, they started cracking down on it.
Yeah. But again, that's the kind of like, they're now not doing it because they've been found out.
They've been found out, not for any other reason.
Not doing it because they know it's wrong.
No, they claimed that their marketing was not directed at teenagers. Oh, so are you a tiny USB drive that a teenager can put up their sleeve? That's not
with a really beautiful young person doing it.
So that's one of the big problems with vapes. They're very hard to find.
Yeah.
Teachers find it hard to get on top of them because, they can put them in their pencil case or hide them up their sleeve. They're really easy. The cigarette crumples and then they're hard to smoke. Whereas, and you need something to combustible and whatever. Yeah. So coming into the advertising, platforms like Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, there have been controls put in place. So it's supposed to be over 18, sites where it's over 18, you're allowed to talk about this stuff. TikTok, we know is a 12 rated app. It's incredibly popular. And the video hosting platform has a growing trend, particularly in US accounts, are promoting the sale of devices in a package that is discreet. So they're saying to, we can send this to you. You won't have Vape Superstore on it or whatever.
So your parents won't know.
But you know what? They don't even need that because I know another parent I just spoke to this morning who said, yeah, my daughter's doing it. We have other battles we're having to fight.
Yes.
So, I can't really be hardline about this. She bought them off Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, and that is a real issue, isn't it? Because there are battles we're fighting and maybe we go, do you know what? That's not the worst one. And, if your kid's going, well, I'll just do it socially at a party, like really occasionally, then okay, well, let's just see how that is rather than, going hard line on it. It is, we have to pick our battles. It's a tricky one, but it can lead to other things and we don't know the consequences.
And once again, you don't know whether that particular vape, you need to know that that vape is not going to cause these lung injuries or things. And
once they get to a certain age as well, I mean, I think the young teenagers, we have much more input, don't we? But once they get to a certain age and they're off doing their own thing, we don't know what they're doing. And they're also making their own choices. So we are literally sowing seeds, are giving them information, and then they are having to make their own choices. We can't make them do or not do anything.
No. So tackling it is a tricky one. Once again, gentle conversations, find out as much as you can, and you need to sit on their side of the fence and look out. You can't get someone to stop vaping if they don't want to.
No.
We know that. You can't get someone to stop smoking if they don't want to. You can't get someone to stop drinking if they don't want to. So you actually have to get them to the point where they say, I don't want to do it.
And in fact, you can push them to doing it more, can't you, if you're silly about it?
Yes. So you need to find what's in your armory. So, I mean, you could use consequences if you have them available. It's a tough one, but actually the problem once they've started vaping is, again, that addiction cycle. So there's a influencer called Mirabella McCowell, who I'll put in the website, is really good to look at because she was a freshman in high school, so young, when she first started vaping. By the time she was 19, she said it scared her how much of her time was dedicated to serving her nicotine addiction instead of benefiting her future self. She decided to quit. She thought it was going to be easy, and she documented her journey on TikTok and YouTube. She was hit with severe withdrawal symptoms, which resulted in her becoming violently ill, vomiting, breaking down in tears, battling urges to vape. One of the videos that she uploaded onto her YouTube, it just showed 10 hours after she'd taken her last hit, she was bawling and trembling and really struggling to fight intense cravings.
Wow, that's amazing information out there. Yeah. That's really brave of her.
So she's a good, yes, it's very brave of her. And she's actually a big advocate now for giving up vaping or not getting into it.
And that's a brilliant thing to show your teens, isn't it? Because that's really relatable and it sounds really real. I haven't seen it, but I'm going to look that up.
And it doesn't sound like a parent telling you, don't be cool.
No, somebody being sick because they've had too much vape. That's much more effective than us going, don't do it.
And her top tips are: give your vape to someone else so you can't use this in a moment of weakness. Ooh. Find your why. You need to know why you're giving this up and why you shouldn't be doing it. So just having your parent holding a stick over you is not going to work, right? No. It needs to be something better than that. Quitting nicotine is a choice you have to make every single day because there's these strong needs to go back to it. So you want strong coping mechanisms like chewing gum, time with your loved ones, watching a new TV show, reading, working out, anything that is that you can replace it with. Giving yourself rewards and tracking your progress. There are apps that can be downloaded now, scheduling those rewards so that they have something to look forward to. So you can be part of this process as a parent.
Yes.
You can say, I'm going to support you. And you can also listen to our episode talking about making changes and New Year's resolutions and the micro resolutions that you can make that just get you you just need to get to the next hurdle. Yeah. Just keep going. Find a community of people who believe in you so that you can be the community for your teenager. Yeah. Your teenager can find other people who will support them and give yourself a break. Yeah. If they find it that they'd struggle one day, don't go, well, there's no point anymore, is there?
No, that's very good advice for any addiction, which she's just given there. I mean, that's brilliant.
All of it. So there's a website called teen.smokefree.gov. Again, I'll put that link on the podcast notes that you can go to for advice and support. There are lots of things out there, but please sit and talk to your teen and be on their side of the fence. Yeah,
and it's really easy to get really panicky and worried, isn't it? But have a conversation.
Get back into your zone.
Regulate. It's important, guys.
So what do you think? Have you had to deal with vaping? Are you regularly talking about it with your teens? Is there anything that you think we might have missed on this podcast? Have you had any great tips that you could share with us? Because, we're learning as we go along too. If you enjoyed this, then do tell your friends, tell the schools, set up a support group for other parents of teenagers where you can listen to and discuss our episodes or share books you've read. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast because that helps people to find it. And it would be a massive bonus if you left a review.
Yes, please.
We've seen some fantastic ones and it just makes our day. So thank you. You can also sign up to review all the latest on our website, which is www.teenagersuntangled.com, where there's a blog, reviews, links to every episode and easy ways to contact us both. Susie has her own website,
which is www.amindful-life.co.uk.
And all those tips, that tip she was giving at the start, this is a really important one to get your head around. So if you want some coaching on that, she's a perfect person to talk to about it. And that's it for now.
Yeah. Goodbye for now.